the FIFO model. This model is regarding the federal fiscal system and the TIBO model in general, which is the basic model for the federal fiscal system theory in general. I believe this topic is of particular importance because the Italian political scene has been talking about this kind of system for the last 20 years, and more states are moving toward this kind of system. The main hypothesis that what TIBO was trying to find was a more efficient way of supplying public goods, trying to combat the free rider problem. The model is based on some simple hypotheses, and it basically states that states have the ability to choose the tax rates to apply and the levels of public goods to give to each household. Households are perfectly mobile and then decide the perfect level of public goods they need and just migrate from one place to another until they reach the optimal preferences. The paper is structured in classical literature, modern literature, and a conclusive part which is going to deal with what are the possible future topics of research. For the classical research, the main authors are Musgrave, Pose, and Wilson. And one of the most important items of discussion has been the assignment problem, meaning which government should be assigned the problems of allocation of public goods. There is a distribution process and stabilization. All three authors agree that the allocation of public goods should be assigned to state governments, which could be intended as our regioni, because they have a higher efficiency and therefore they can operate better than federal government could. On the same level, stabilization process should be left to the federal government because it has a higher capacity to work in a macroeconomic environment and is therefore more efficient than the state governments. For the redistribution effect, there is some different hypotheses. Both Musgrave and Olds believe the redistribution process should be left to the state government, should be left to the federal governments because it has a higher capacity of equalization and because there are some efficiency issues regarding the assignment of redistribution to state governments. While Wilson sees the redistribution effect as another form of public good and therefore believes the redistribution should be left to state governments because it has a higher efficiency in providing said public goods. The fiscal competition is one of the crucial points in the TIBO model. According to the original model, TIBO supposed the fiscal competition would have increased the efficiency in the allocation of public goods, because states will compete one another, trying to lower the tax rates and offering always optimal level of public goods. What empirical studies have shown, and also what Wilson has shown, is that if you take it as an hypothesis, a capital tax, states are going to compete one another, trying to set always a lower tax rate. Setting always a lower tax rate is going to decrease the level of public goods the states are going to offer, and it's going to decrease the welfare to a non-efficient level. Intergovernmental grants also play a crucial role. Intergovernmental grants are grants that are coming from one state to another state, and they serve two main purposes. An equalization measure, which is going to be particularly important as we're going to see in the mobility and the fiscal federalism, and also as a Pigovian tax. A Pigovian tax is going to be particularly efficient because it's going to reduce the spillover effect coming from the interaction between states. The concept of labor mobility has been of particular interest for both classical and modern literature. In this case, the main authors have modified some of the main hypotheses from the original TIBO model in order to make it more realistic. In this case, we take into hypothesis the fact that income is no longer mobile, but we take as an example land income. In this case, when households move from one state to another, they are not going to be able to take their income with them. This means that when you move to a state, you start working the land that is there. And this also means that you're going to have to, there are going to be decreasing marginal returns on income. Another important hypothesis is that the number of states is fixed. This results in an inefficiency, and it's not going to be possible to find an equilibrium because there is going to be inefficiency related to the migration process. There is going to be a surpopulation in one state and underpopulation in other states. The only way there can be an equalization and so you can find an efficiency is through intergovernmental grants that will induce a change in labor and a change in the allocation of labor. As I said, this topic has also been dealt with by modern literature. In this case, to simplify the model, we've taken we've taken the fact, into account the fact that migration from one place to another is something very costly. And so we've taken as an hypothesis the hypothesis of immobile households. In this case, households can no longer sort their preferences moving from one state to another, and therefore there is an inefficiency regarding the fact that households cannot optimize their levels of public goods. The only way to solve this problem is again through intergovernmental grants, where the level of where the grants a state should receive is going to depend on the average income between high population states, so high income states and low income states, the average income tax, and the level of population between the two states. Another important hypothesis that is being moved again towards the labor mobility and the migration process as a whole has been setting migration as a long-run decision. In this case, what happens is economists believe that you cannot set migration to be a dependent variable of a political choice of a state. It's more logic just to say that migration happens from one state to another, and then states are going to decide what tax rate to apply. In this case, the tax rate the states apply becomes a dependent variable of a migration process. Modern literature has also extended its study on the pros and cons coming from the expenditure assignments and the decentralization process. What we have seen is that there is a net increase in the growth and a decrease in rent seeking. We have an increase in growth because there is a higher efficiency coming from the process, and a decrease in rent seeking because there is less rent for politicians to seek from. We have contrasting evidence on corruptions, thanks to a higher accountability level, where there is a higher interaction between households and politicians, and actually households who know who are the politicians who are giving them the public goods. We see a decrease in corruption. On the other hand, being there a higher closeness between politicians and voters and households, we also see some increasing trends in the corruption levels. An innovation, there is also a strong innovation part, where, as I've said before, there is a competition between states. State competition should lead to finding more cost-effective measures to supply the public goods, which could then later on be extended to other states. This kind of innovation will result then to a higher efficiency in all the federal system as a whole. There's also interaction in the agency problem, where putting an intermediary, in this case the state governments, between households and the federal government should decrease the level of miscommunication between the principal and the agents, but can in some cases also be a source of an ulterior agency problem between state governments and federal governments. In this case, we see some of the most common broad tax bases state governments can apply, and in all three of them we see that there are some kinds of inefficiencies. The main idea behind this is what kind of taxes can state governments apply. There are two views regarding this kind of literature. One is that states simply piggyback on the federal government taxes, hoping that they wouldn't distort too much the original federal government tax. Or another one is that they work through a federal vertical gap system, where the federal government grants some money to the state governments once they shows their optimal levels of public goods. In this case, it's important to mention that the system works as an extensive form game, where if the state moves first, they're going to be induced to over-provide public goods, knowing that the federal government is going to cover any debt loss. So what really has to happen in this case is that the federal government has to move before the state governments, deciding what level of what is the amount, the value of the grant the federal government is going to assign to the state government, and work in this way. Possible future research has been interested on some main points. There is some problems regarding the environmental policies in federalism, because there are going to be some harmonization issues and cross-border spillover effect. This is because environmental pollution normally cannot be isolated in just one state. It's going to have a spillover effect on many other states. As an example, we can take the pollution of air. We cannot just limit the levels of pollution to one state. And there are going to be the problems regulating the taxes that are going to be affected in this case. One solution could be to increase the control between borders, but it's going to be it's not going to be a cost-effective measure. Agglomeration is also, the agglomeration process is also a particularly pungent problem in this kind of system. As we said, if there is a strong migration movement from one place to another, there are going to be some inefficiencies. And we see that today's economies are moving toward agglomerating economies, which are leading to economies of scale. In this case, we have to find the economies are trying to find way to avoid the equalization issues that may arise from an agglomeration process. Natural resources also play a crucial role in this case. When in a federal system, if there are some natural resources that are concentrated or located in one particular state, we're going to have a richer state and many other poorer states, and there's going to be a migration movement from the poorer states to the richer states. This again will lead to a migration process and to some inefficiency from the mobility model, which could result either in an inefficiency or disequilibrium, or they could cross barriers. But if you cross the barriers, we're going to have a problem regarding the horizontal fiscal equity, meaning that there is going to be a state which is going to be richer and other states which are going to be poorer, and it's not really the main idea behind our model. Timing and commitment, again, is referring to the problem that federal governments have to move before the state governments, because if this were not to happen, there would be inefficiency regarding the levels of public goods that are going to be provided by the state governments, who are going to oversupply the said public goods. Be happy to answer any questions you may have. I hope I've been exhaustive. If there's anything you want to know.
Well, thank you.